Simplex-IT CEO Bob Coppedge returns as guest host to discuss a new partnership between Sophos and Cowbell, upgraded endpoint security solutions, and more, plus a special guest interview with Sophos' Eric Kokonas on MDR adoption and how MSPs should employ it. It's a ChannelPro Weekly Special Edition. He's doing it again, sponsored by Sophos. This episode is sponsored by Sophos, a worldwide leader in innovating and delivering cybersecurity as a service. Sophos protects more than 500,000 organizations and more than 100 million users from advanced cyber threats, including ransomware. The channel-first, channel-best security company is passionate about fighting cybercrime and unwavering in its commitment to protecting organizations of all sizes. Sophos' integrated portfolio of managed security services, including Sophos Managed Detection and Response and Endpoint Network and Cloud Solutions, are part of the Sophos Adaptive Cybersecurity ecosystem and are powered by threat intelligence from Sophos XOps for faster and more contextual and synchronized protection, detection, and response. Offerings are available exclusively through Sophos' global chain of partners and managed service providers and are easily managed in the cloud-native Sophos Central platform. Do yourself and your business a favor by heading over to sophos.com, Sophos.com, and check out the various endpoint, network, security operation, email, and cloud solutions available. Again, that's sophos.com. Hello and welcome to this special edition ChannelPro Weekly episode. This week here, my name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, your host of this fine show for folks out there like you. And when I say who are you, you are the VARs, the IT integrators, the IT resellers, the IT consultants. I'm using the acronyms IT a lot. If you know what that means, and if you know what like MSP stands for, you're in the right place and you're going to get a whole lot out of this show. And if you don't know what MSP stands for, you're going to learn as we go through this episode that and many other things that you will enjoy. So make sure you stick with us. This episode is sponsored by our friends at Sophos. Very excited to have them as a sponsor this week, so we can do this special edition episode. And I don't even have to do it alone. You know why? Because we've got two awesome people here who are going to make this special edition episode just absolutely fantastic. First, the man of the hour, the guy who keeps the trains running on time at ChannelPro, sitting in his seat this week, executive editor Rich Freeman. Welcome, Rich.
Well, thank you, Matt. Am I normally standing on my seat?
We should try a show out that way. At least we'll be able to see the bottom half of you, at least. You know, like it's like your legs will be talking at us. I think that will be pretty compelling YouTube content.
Change of pace from the talking head concept on video, talking kneecaps.
Absolutely. That will be good stuff. How are you this week? I know you couldn't join us last week for the Jump Cloud special edition episode, but it was really good. But you know, Colleen Fry kind of did a pretty good job co-hosting, Rich. You might be in trouble.
Yeah, well, you know what? I've been telling her for ages she needs to have a podcast of her own or be part of a podcast. So I am not surprised at all that she knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, she did a great job. It was a really good special, and but I'm glad you're back here for this one because it's going to be an awesome show. You know who else is with us? One of my favorite guests that we have on. He's the owner and CEO of Simplex-IT, who's an Ohio-based managed services provider created in 2007 to help businesses with or without internal IT departments. Bob has worn just about every IT hat that there is, and has also authored 3 books, including a CEO survival guide to information technology. Please welcome the one, the only, Bob Coppedge. Welcome, Bob.
Yay! Only for various legal reasons. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm really glad to have you on, and I'm really excited that you're here because I mean you're here because you are a Sophos partner. Every time we do a special edition episode, we try to find a partner of that company to come on so you can really give us your insight and your perspective as well. And I couldn't think of a better one than you to have on because not only are you a Sophos partner, but you are also absolutely hilarious and make every show just an absolute joy.
So everybody else you asked said no. Got it. Okay.
Well, there was the other. No. You're definitely my first choice. So, Bob, for those who may have not caught a previous episode that you've been on with us as a guest host, please tell us a little bit more about you and a little bit more about your company.
Essentially, I have that metadata metric saying I'm old. So I've been in IT since really the late 70s and the like. Former CIO, IT director, developer, network, blah, blah, blah. The moniker I use often is crotchety old geek. Never ask me a question unless you want to hear the answer to. And it's one where we do a lot of it. I'm also a firm believer in sharing knowledge, sharing information, podcasts such as this. Not this one particular, but podcasts like this one, No, and also try to have a little bit of fun, be a little snarky, all that kind of fun stuff.
So since I mean, you have seen, if you got into IT in the 70s, I mean, you have seen just an enormous amount of change over the years. I mean, was 70s before my time, was that like punch card era, or was that?
I actually got through without ever having to do punch cards, and that's only because I truly bribed people to do my punch cards for me in the couple of jobs that I had back in the late 70s, early 80s. But yeah, and it's funny because on the one hand, everything has been evolutionary, everything's been revolutionary. The things that have happened and the things that change, and you get back to the Moore's law, you get back and all of that kind of fun stuff. And yet, when you look at it with 50 years hindsight, it also was very smooth. And it's kind of weird, all of the changes that are happening, and I think it's going to get even faster coming down the road.
So young Bob Coppedge back in the 70s doing IT related work. Did the industry change in the way that you expected? Like, if you were to look at then and now, and if you're going to envision what IT is going to be like in 2023, is it anything like you would have imagined?
Nobody had a freaking clue, because everybody simply extrapolated things in that direction. So you got to remember, when IT started, I mean, truly started, it started with a small number of machines that did actuary tables and artillery tables. It just did calculations really, really fast. And so fast forward there to 1980 or so, everybody was doing the same thing bookkeepers were already doing. Okay, so we did accounts receivable, accounts payable, inventory, fixed assets. That was it. But we only did what we already were doing. And it wasn't until really about 1980s or 1990s, the late 80s and early 90s, where we said we could do different things. We could do things that are different from a business perspective, and even more so since then. And one of the things I constantly tell people is that back in the early days of IT, it was really about T, very little about I. It was, what's the technology? How can we make this go faster, stronger? How can we distribute it? How can we do whatever? And it really wasn't until the beginning of the 20th century where we started going, well, this I stuff is pretty important too. And so we started getting, what can we do with all this information, with all this data? What can we do that's different? And now it's becoming more and more the I is important and more important, and the T is less important. And so now we're basically saying, okay, look at all these decisions, look at all of these industries that have come around that weren't possible because the information wasn't there. And look at all the, and you'll see what I'm doing here, look at all of the security issues that are happening because all of this information is potentially vulnerable. So we need companies like, oh man, I don't know who a good security company would be, but we need people who can do that sort of thing, protect us.
So
Sophos.
That one. Yeah, that one. And a big thanks to them for sponsoring this special edition. So I want to ask you a question, because you have just such an amazing insight just over the length of time that you've been in the business. If you could, what were like one or two or maybe even three occasions, because you said the word revolutionary, and that's interesting because we can all see a notebook and imagine that the next notebook might be thinner, lighter, faster, whatever. But you were around at times when there were truly revolutionary things happening. So like, what were just a few examples, like when you saw, I don't know, what, networking for the first time? Like, did that, like, what were some of those things that you saw that you're like, wow, that's going to change the world and change this business?
I'm going to answer the question in a different way. I went to Atari back in the early 80s, and back when some people, ask your parents, whatever. They were one of the first game developers, the first home game developers, all that. And I went there for a job, oddly enough and weirdly enough, on the marketing side for their new home computers. These were before PCs. And I remember talking to their head of development. This is the guy who was responsible for all the programs. And he basically said, these computers, these desktop computers, will never be used for business. And I knew at that point, I did not want to work with this company. Okay, because they got it so wrong. So that's one thing. Bill Gates, in the 1990s, early 90s, wrote a book called The Road Ahead. And it talked about, this is pre-internet, or this is when the internet was just starting to become a thing. he came out with a book that essentially talked about his vision of distributed computing. And he said throughout the book, kind of like the internet. Not the internet, but that's a good start. He was basically introducing the internet as a 1.0, if that. But he then had what's known as the epiphany, where he realized, no, it is the internet. And it's a legend that he went through and talked to every developer at Microsoft saying, from now on, the internet is it, the internet is it, the internet is it. And I have his second edition of the book that talks about the internet as if that is the next big thing. I've never seen an organization make such a pivot as Microsoft did back then, from poo-pooing the internet's not that big of a deal versus, oh no, it seriously is. The world is littered with all of the Ashton Tates, the Borlands, the WordPerfects, the Lotus, the Novells, the Wang, the Digital Equipment, the Data General, for companies that could not adapt because their thing was fantastic until it wasn't. That will be the second thing. The third one will be tough, but I think we may be seeing it now with AI. And the reason I say this is because AI is not revolutionary. Is what AI does that's revolutionary, and we haven't seen it yet. And it's going to be interesting because every other technology you talk, there is ChatGPT, or the Microsoft's version of what Google's coming out with. But we haven't seen I'll call it what we used to call the killer app. What is being actually done that is increasing value to either a consumer or product or the producer of product. So far, we're seeing everybody talk about ways we're going to do the same thing, but better, stronger, faster, less expensive, more value, or the like. And it's interesting because everybody, you now have all of these sudden experts on ChatGPT because they ran it last week or whatever, who are talking about it as if this is the greatest thing. It's not. It's going to help introduce the next greatest thing. So I guess those would be the three things that I find really, really weird and interesting in the development of our industry.
Yeah, I think you're right on, because a new technology could come out, and I like the internet as an example, because the internet was kind of like there for a while before it was ever really embraced or used. And then somebody came along and like refined that thing or figured it out or came up with a use case. And then it's like, an exponential amount of change in a very short period of time. I do agree with you. I think the AI thing, we're just to that point where like something has happened in the AI world, be it ChatGPT or whatever, and these large language models that we're about to see that exponential growth. And I don't think we know what's going to happen, but it's either going to be really cool or really scary, I think.
And I, for one, welcome our new AI overlords.
Maybe they'll model their walking AI bots in the same vein as Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it can finally become reality.
There you go.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Now, you mentioned on top of the show you do a lot of videos and recording.
Yep.
for sharing give back. Tell us a little bit about that.
So we're a big proponent in sharing our knowledge. As I said, that's why part of the reason why I do these podcasts. But we also do a ton of videos. We go to simplex-it.com. Right there on top is our learning center. We did about 120 videos last year, and it's on everything from what is an MSP. Why should you not use an MSP? Why should you use an MSP? What is spam filtering? All of those kind of fun stuff, with the idea of not selling but educating. And the reason being is because I'm a firm believer in we have to be value add in this industry. We have to be, what are our clients going to be able to do that increases value by their definition, not ours? And our industry is so good at talking about how wonderful we are. But we haven't really engaged enough with that. What's that value add? What's that education? How can we make everybody, smarter? And any of you MSPs who take a look at our videos, go ahead and link to them. Go ahead and copy them. Do the video yourself. Enjoy, but just let's get out there and educate people.
Yeah, I'll make sure that we put a link to that video source that you have there for people in the show notes. So, folks, if you're listening on your phone, just open up the description area. You should find the link in there. If you don't, you can go to channelpronetwork.com, find the show sheet for the special edition Sophos podcast. We'll put the link to it in there. If you're watching on YouTube, you can open up the description area. We'll put the link in there as well. Make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe, hit the bell, hit all the buttons, because YouTube has got a lot of buttons. And don't press the thumbs down one, though. We don't like the thumbs down button. Not our friend. But any other button is fine.
So
We'll
thumbs down on the thumbs down.
So yeah, it is definitely thumbs down on the thumbs
Okay.
down. It makes sense. I think that makes sense.
I think it does.
But we'll put a link to that, as well as all of the different stories and stuff that we're going to be talking about today, because we've got a few news stories we're going to cover, and we'll talk about those. Some of our Sophos related news stories. We're going to do a quick mention on a news story that we got about Dynabook that's going to hit the site. We also are going to have an interview guest, Eric Kokonas. He's the head of Sophos MDR product marketing. He's going to be on with us a little later in the show to talk about MDR adoption, talk about the benefits of MDR, and we're going to talk a lot about cybersecurity. I'm sure that will be a great interview. And with Bob on, I know it's going to be a hilarious interview. So you'll absolutely get a lot of information and a lot of entertainment value out of it for sure. And of course, later on in the show, we'll wrap up with a little bit of fun and games in part 3. And yeah, it's gonna be a great special. Strap in, folks. Rich, Sophos is in the news. They've partnered with somebody. Who have they partnered with?
Yeah, well, and this story is sort of the latest example of what's been a big trend in the security industry, particularly over the course of the last year. It's kind of remarkable how quickly this has happened. And in fact, approximately 13 months ago, there was a story that I'm sure we spoke about on this program about Friend Micro partnering with a cyber insurance company called Cowbell Cyber. We had an executive from Cowbell on the show with us just a few episodes ago. And what Trend and Cowbell announced that they were going to do is feed data from Trend Micro systems to the Cowbell backend that would allow Cowbell to assess an end user environment and not just rely on a questionnaire, but really be able to see how compliant with security best practices that customer is, and that allows them to put a more accurate price on a cyber insurance policy. You can also kind of continue downloading that data if you're Cowbell and monitor continued compliance. So very smart, sensible deal that actually works out very well for everybody. Because it makes life simpler for the MSP. It typically, if the end user is doing the right things, it can not only help the end user get coverage, but get it at better rates because they can prove that they're doing what they say they're doing. Well, here we are 13 months after that Trend Micro story, and Sophos has just announced a very, very similar agreement with Cowbell. Now, this is just a couple of days ago as we're recording this episode right now. So on an opt-in basis, Sophos isn't sharing your data with Cowbell if you don't want them to, but if you do, they can take all of that great telemetry that their systems collect, send it over to Cowbell, and same kind of story. You're going to get through that risk assessment, that coverage application process faster, more easily for everybody involved. And if you are doing the right things in terms of security, you're going to get better rates. If you're not, you're going to find out exactly what you need to do to get better rates. And it just streamlines a process that is a very important one. I mean, everybody needs to have cyber insurance coverage right now, but the process of getting it and keeping it can be a very painful one for SMBs and MSPs and even the cyber insurance companies and agents. So it makes a ton of sense for the security vendors to be partnering with companies like Cowbell and doing some of this automation behind the scenes that streamlines that process and also just makes getting and providing insurance way more efficient. And so you're seeing agreements like this between, there's a security vendor named Nodeware that has an agreement in place with Sigh. I'm blanking. There are 2, 3, 4 other agreements like this that have gone into effect in the last 13 months or so. And Sophos is the last one to get in on this really important trend that I think defines how cyber insurance is going to get woven into security in managed services going forward. We will rapidly, I think, move out of this era of filling out the 25-page questionnaire and all that and get into something that's a little bit smarter and more automated, and that makes it easier for the MSP to include insurance as just another part of their security stack.
Yeah, I remember the first time we covered a story like this with an agreement. You called it like this was going to be something we were going to see a lot more of because I think it does make sense. Bob, does this make sense? Is this something that you would be looking forward
It had to. It had to. I mean, the predecessor of that is auto insurance. I mean, you have that whole thing about insurances are there to manage risk. So they want to charge a lot more money to somebody who's careless and are willing to charge less money to someone who's careful, whatever the insurance is covering. So you have, Flow with Progressive and all the other folks, and we'll give you a safe driver discount. Well, how do you define safe driver? Well, you haven't filed a claim and you don't have tickets. Beyond that, we hope you're a safe driver. No, now they're actually monitoring. They're receiving metrics by the pieces, parts, software, whatever you put in your car. My wife tells me what to put in my car. I have no idea. But that just pulls the numbers. Now they can prove it because they know what you do. So cyber insurance was facing a much worse dilemma with all of the carriers either having no idea what they're doing and they're just paying all these claims, or trying to raise the bar for people to prove it. And how do you do that? Well, do the same thing. Actually watch what the client is doing and what MDR resources, what we're talking about with Sophos and the like, that's the goal. They're watching what they're doing. So it's a partnership that makes absolutely perfect sense. So yeah, duh. And the one last thing I would say was Travelers, who was one of the first carriers that actually started requiring you to fill out, you are doing this, so on and so forth. We actually referred to it here as the Traveler's Dilemma when somebody was called upon to fill out these things. They actually took one of their clients to court earlier, about a year ago, maybe not quite a year ago, because that client filled out their form and said they did do these multi-factor authentications. They claimed it, they paid the claim, and then, oh, you didn't do it. You didn't do it as much as we thought you did. And then they took the client to court to say, we're not going to support you. We're not going to pay out the claim. Well, let's eliminate that issue by actually watching and knowing what you're doing. Makes perfect sense.
So are you doing a lot of cyber insurance in your quotes? Are you doing that as well or not?
No,
specifically,
but it's because of the way you asked that question. We're not cyber insurance people. We are not going to be. What we do, however, was we partner with someone who is, because I want them to be able to say, here's your best deal, here's your worst deal, we can improve, we can improve, that's impartial to us. Because we're a small enough organization that I'd be uncomfortable. I don't want to look like I am trying to, a guy, I got a deal and I know this guy, he's got this great. The thing about Sophos is they're big enough and they've got enough of a relationship with that party. I don't have that issue, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. Well, cool. Rich, anything else to add?
Yeah, one last thing I should have mentioned before, actually, particularly if there are any Sophos partners out there who are kind of interested to learn more or actually go ahead and get coverage for a customer from Cowbell. Cowbell is now listed on the Sophos marketplace. So Sophos has an online marketplace where their partners sell software, hardware, services, etc. Cowbell is now listed on the Sophos marketplace. Cowbell has actually, you don't actually get your insurance, as we learned a few episodes ago talking to Cowbell. You don't actually buy the insurance from Cowbell. You talk to a Cowbell agent. And Cowbell has put a relationship, or has a relationship in place with an online agent called iBind, IBYND. And the iBind folks are all set up, ready, willing to go ahead and help Sophos partners take advantage of this alliance. And so the place to get started, you could always call your Sophos rep, but you can also go to the marketplace and learn more and kind of kick this process off.
Excellent. Cool. Well, and if there's any other details in that story, we'll again send folks to the show notes so they can go and go to the site and read up on that and get all the details. But we've got another Sophos story, Rich. It's not the only one today, and they have upgraded something. What have they upgraded?
They've upgraded a number of things, actually, and we are getting to this a little bit late because this news broke when we were in Washington, D.C. just a few weeks ago, very, very busy doing a conference, and so we didn't have an episode that week, and here's our first chance to talk about this. But there were a number of things that they announced, the most significant of which was they have made an addition to Intercept-X, which is their sort of primary flagship endpoint protection product. And they've added what they call adaptive active adversary protection. Say that 5 times fast, please. But basically, Intercept-X has been a behavior-based product since it was first launched. It's watching for particular kinds of behaviors that it knows to be associated with ransomware, for example. What this new adaptive active adversary protection feature does is watch for subtler things and the presence of attack kits and so on. Basically, they're looking for indicators of what security experts call quote unquote hands on keyboard incidents, meaning you have an active adversary. There's somebody inside the firewall who's moving around and doing stuff. And it's not as easy typically you kind of know what behaviors to look for if ransomware is getting executed in an environment. You don't necessarily know exactly what to look for when you have an active adversary in place. But this system has been trained to look for certain behaviors. If it spots something that it considers suspicious, it automatically puts some defenses in place to isolate systems and so on, and try to contain any potential damage. An alert goes out, and you can kind of figure out whether or not this is actually an active adversary situation or a false positive of some kind. So that's pretty significant. There is the addition of expanded protection in the Intercept-X for server product. Expanded protection for Linux endpoints right now. So they had anti-malware and quarantine functionality in place for that before, including some runtime detection. They've added some live discover investigation, live response remediation assistance to that product. And Linux is it's a presence on the desktop. It's not a huge one, but it's huge in server. So it's good to have as much protection as possible in place in the server version of Intercept-X. There is a new agent for Intercept-X that supports not only Windows devices like before, but Mac OS devices. It's all in one agent now, basically, which means fewer agents that you have to send out and manage on the endpoint. They've also they shrunk the Intercept-X agent. It's a lot more compact now. 30% fewer processes, 40% less memory consumed on Windows devices. Let's see, they have an EDR sensor. It's 80% lighter than so they've shrunk the Intercept-X agents a little bit. And a few other odds and ends that they announced actually at the same time. There's a new health check feature that you can use to get a real-time view into the customer's configuration settings, and do they have things set up? Are they in policy? Do they have things set up the way that you set them up before, etc.? So a number of interesting different things from Sophos just within the last few weeks.
Yeah, too bad they didn't implement like a health check feature, like they can tell you your blood pressure and cholesterol levels in real time. That'd be pretty cool. But Bob, any of those upgrades or enhancements excite you?
Yeah, and what I mean by that is most of these things are evolutionary, and this is one of those where, unfortunately or fortunately, I should say fortunately from this perspective, I'm used to seeing this stuff from Sophos. I mean, that's one of the reasons I like them, and they are constantly improving. They're constantly looking for ways to do things. And Rich, when you were talking about like that hands-on, one of the things that the bad guys love to do is to trick end users into giving remote access under the guise of I'm here to help you. And when the bad guy has remote access, a lot of the endpoint protection strategies are not to look for someone who is there doing work on a computer. It's there for a program to be run, a session to be run, malware to be, all of that kind of fun stuff to happen. But a person at the keyboard, we have to give that one a little more leeway. And the bad guys know this. So the bad guys are coming up with more and more ways to try to attack from that perspective. So the endpoint has to become smarter and smarter to look at it from a behavioral standpoint and to say, yeah, that's not the way it should be working right now. So that's kind of the direction they're going in. And I remember when Intercept X was first added, to the endpoint back in the antivirus days, that was one of the things that they were looking for, where they were looking for the behavior that was going on. Because in some cases, you don't know that there was an infection. You don't know there was an attack until you see the behavior of the computer change dramatically. And most vendors do that now to some degree or another. But Sophos was one of the first ones. I remember when I first saw that design, I was like, wow, that is cool. That makes sense.
That is really cool. That they're looking at kind of, so if you trick the user into giving remote access, at least you can have something there that's monitoring the behavior, like what the behavior of the person at the is doing as being malicious.
It gets back to that. I don't know if you're a Sherlock Holmes fan, but there was the classic Sherlock Holmes story where Sherlock Holmes says to, of course, the befuddled cop, he says, "Inspector, I draw your attention to the behavior of the dog." And Lestrade says, "Well, the dog didn't do anything." And he says, "Exactly." Yeah. And it's one of those where there's so many times where you look for behavior that is inappropriate, that just isn't normal, isn't expected. And that's where you can say something may be happening here. And
elementary, dear Coppedge, elementary.
Absolutely.
Awesome stuff. Cool. Well, Rich, I mean, you said a lot there. There's a lot more stuff. I'm sure people could go and read this to learn. Any other thoughts or anything else you wanted to add?
No. There are a few other nuggets in there, so we'll link to this story I wrote a few weeks ago from the show notes.
Excellent. Cool. I think we have one more news story that we're going to switch to, and that's something that caught my eye that I wanted to talk about briefly, and that's a release from Dynabook that they are starting to ship a few of their business line notebooks with 13th gen Intel mobile processors. So if you don't know about the 13th gen Intel processors, they're this kind of like new hybrid architecture, kind of a big change of processor design from Intel. That they're very cool, and I caught that they are starting to roll these out into some of their lines, starting with the Portage X40LK, which is one of their ultralights, and they have a 14-inch and a 15.6-inch model on their Tecra line. The A40 and the A50K are in there. There's optional Intel Iris Xe graphics, DDR4 memory, bunch of different SSD options. They're both mil-spec tested. They're like this kind of weird blue kind of color. I'm not a huge fan of the case color, and we actually reviewed one of these not long ago. We reviewed the X40K not long ago, or I can talk about that. And there's some similar stuff, so maybe I'll throw a link to the review in there as well, so you kind of get a rough idea of how these are. And for those who may not know the word Dynabook, Dynabook is the new name for Toshiba PC. So if you are familiar with Toshiba computers back in the day, this is I don't know, they got bought, sold, traded hands a bunch of times, and now they are Dynabook. But they have a lot of the same kind of lines, like Satellite Pro and Tecra and Portage. So it has this kind of like kind of bluish color. You'll like it or you won't like it. But they've outfitted those couple models with those, and their pricing starting at $969.99 for the Tecra A50, a little more for the Tecra A40, and $17.99 for the Portage X40LK. So yeah, new processors are rolling out. Bobby, you played with any laptops that have the 13th gen stuff in it?
I'm at that point where I have no idea what the heck's under the hood. And I don't mean that as to poo-poo anything that comes out that's new or anything along those lines, but it is one where there is such, Moore's law is Moore's law. And I remember back in the day where when we got a new desktop, $2,500, that was our budget. And we didn't care whatever, because it was going to be faster, it was going to be stronger, and so on and so forth. And the prices that you're talking about, under $1,000 for a couple of the models, and then under $2,000, it's obscene. So that's cool. And then you look at it the same way, because Rich, your point about the Intercept taking up less memory and using less processes, you have both parties are trying to make it so that the programs aren't as bloatware, Microsoft Office, anyone, but also most of the security products, that's the biggest complaint you hear, Is it slows down my system or the like? But then you've got these guys who are coming out with faster and faster processes and systems. So yay.
Yeah, well, the agent bloat is definitely a problem in the stack. Sometimes you have how many agents do you have in your stack, Bob?
Depending upon what you define as an agent and what levels and all that, but probably half a dozen.
Yeah, well, that's not too bad. We've had some conversations with other providers where there's there could maybe be an entire dozen agents running, sucking up resources. Yeah, and it does take its toll on system performance pretty quickly.
Yeah. Now,
for sure.
if you talk about servers, you're going to have more on the servers.
Yeah.
So yeah,
but you got a lot. You generally got more horsepower in a server than you do in a notebook, for sure. Also to point out, for those who haven't seen or read too much about the 13th gen Intel stuff, they're pretty power efficient. This hybrid architecture model that they're going to, these P series cores that they're putting in this one are 28 watts, which is pretty low for an Intel, for kind of a higher performance Intel chip as well. So if you are running a lot of machines and power efficiency is important, that's another thing that's getting better. So higher performance, better power efficiency, better stuff. So we'll put a link to this story if you want to check out. We put some pictures of them in here. We'll put it in the show notes. We'll drop a link to the review. So if you want to kind of get an idea of what the Dynabook laptops are about, we reviewed one not too long ago. And this one's the Portage X40LK. I reviewed the 40K. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of similarities between the two models, other than just the processor that they're running. So go and check those out. Rich, you like pretty laptops? Do you like the blue?
You know, it's interesting. I think the first laptop maker and the first laptop that introduced that color, that trend, because it's become a trend. I think HP did that, and this has to be 3-4 years ago when the first HP Dragonfly came out. It was in this kind of blue color that I've just never been a huge fan. I remember thinking to myself, because the Dragonfly is like the thinnest, lightest laptop still that HP has. And I remember thinking to myself, everything about this device looks great for me, except I don't like the color. But you see it everywhere now. There's just a lot of these. I'm not quite sure where that comes from exactly. The other thing interesting, just kind of talking about these devices is, and I don't know if this is true for Bob as well or not. Dynabook, once upon a time, was Toshiba. I can remember in the 90s working at Microsoft having Portage and Tecra device, like those brands have stayed consistent for decades now. But what was Toshiba is now Dynabook, and I forget exactly when this happened or why, but I have to kind of keep reminding myself, oh, that's what became of Toshiba laptops. And then the last but not least thing that I'll just point out is I was looking at some of the specs you have in the article here, Matt. And the three things I care about are weight, battery life, and durability. And those are the things that happen to matter to me in no particular order. And the Portage X40LK is a 14-inch laptop weighing in at 2.3 pounds. And I happened to notice recently that the very latest Lenovo X1 Carbon is also 14 inches, 2.5 pounds. So this is worth for somebody like me who's looking to shave off a little bit of weight in the laptop. This will be something to check out, inspect a little bit more, because 0.2 of a pound, and you're not giving up any monitor real estate.
You must have incredibly sensitive muscles if you can feel the weight difference of 2.2 pounds. It's almost like magic, Rich. It's pretty amazing. Do you actually go to like the grocery store and hang out in the fruits and vegetables department and like kind of weigh things, like hold your hands out and let people weigh, and you're like, yes, this is going to be $4.95 for 6 pounds of onions.
Well, also, or can you do the thing at the carnival where you guess people's weights?
So actually, what it is at the grocery store is I make a pain of myself. I say that this is not an 8-ounce can of beans. I can tell you for a fact this is 7.9.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, the next time I go to the store, I'm going to make sure I have you with me so you can weigh my cans of beans for me.
I knew there were things as bean counters. I didn't know there were bean weight counters. This is a new thing.
Oh, awesome. Very fun. Well, I think that's going to wrap up news. So what do we got ahead, Rich? We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Eric Kokonas from Sophos. We're going to be talking a lot about MDR, a lot about the cybersecurity state right now, and all that stuff. It's going to be a really, really good interview. Stick around. We will be right back. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of this special edition episode sponsored by Sophos. If you're an MSP not looking to bolster your security stack with MDR, there is a good chance you're not only leaving your customers at risk, but also leaving money on the table. Now, here to discuss why MDR adoption is climbing fast and how MSPs should employ it is Eric Kokonas, Head of Product Marketing, Security Operations at Sophos. Welcome, Eric.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you on the show. Before we kind of get, dive into kind of the meat of the interview here, I'd love it for you to take a couple minutes and tell us first a little bit more about you.
Yeah. So I run product marketing for our security operations group. Security operations here at Sophos includes our managed detection and response service, our extended detection and response platform, our XDR platform, SOAR functionality, really just anything that's really cool and exciting in the portfolio. I also have the pleasure of working very closely with the analyst research community. So if you ever read Gartner, Forrester, IDC reports, anything like that, I work very closely with the analyst community. And it's a lot of fun. Keeps things interesting.
Very cool. And you're apparently an avid Lego builder, because I know there's a couple Lego models behind you there for people who are watching here on YouTube. What ones do you have back there?
Yeah. So I've got an original NES Lego that's actually made of Lego, and then a DeLorean too from Back to the Future, which actually converts into the DeLorean model across all 3 films. So I opted for the original mod of it. When I have time, I indulge myself playing with children's toys, and you can see I have all kinds of other nerdy tchotchkes back there as well.
Yeah, we've got like a matching background, because I got my top loader NES back here as well, but that one's the real deal.
I know.
Yours is Lego, but that one there's like a Lego cartridge, right, that you can like stick in there.
Oh yeah. Cartridge. You have to blow on it too to get to do anything like back in the day when you have to do that, or do like the up and down jittering to get it to work right. It's all very true to life. Yeah.
That's super cool. So are you still a gamer today, or is that just a nostalgic look at your past?
Less so now. I would prefer to be more of a gamer, but I've got 2 young kids, so they occupy a lot of time, and that's why I do things like Lego. Because like, hey kids, you want to play Lego? And they're like, sure, but it's really just for me.
So I do have a question to ask you then, Eric, on this.
Yeah.
Do they step on your Legos that you leave on the floor?
Yes, exactly. They're like, Dad, clean up your Legos. This is the worst type of pain anyone can ever imagine, is stepping on one of the single bricks.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm the one responsible for that for sure.
Okay.
That's cool. So last, I don't want to stick on gaming forever, but have you ever actually tried to like get your kids to play one of the old classic NES games?
I haven't yet, but I do think that's the right path for them, right? If you put a PS5 controller in a kid's hands, I'm sure some of them can pick it up because it's just so intuitive to them now. But I've often thought about that. Just give them the classic NES controller, A/B button, put on Mario, and yeah, I do intend to do that here pretty soon. I think they're reaching that age.
Very cool. Yeah, keep it simple, right? And plus, they gotta see how it all evolved from the beginning. I think is definitely important. Bob, are you a gamer at all? You don't strike me as the gaming type.
Oh no, absolutely. Mahjong, pickleball. Game on.
So not much of the digital variety.
Well, no, and it's one of those. I remember Pong when Pong first gets, because I am, unlike most of you guys, I am old. And I actually interviewed at Atari for a job back in right around 80, when they were starting to come out with their first, this was pre-PC computer and the like. And so, yeah, it's adorable to hear you guys talk about how to raise kids, and they won't, it's like, for the love of Pete, they know how to use these things better than I ever will.
That's true. That's probably true.
So,
I have to know I do have a Lego Atari. It's not on display yet. I need more bookshelves, but I do have a Lego Atari, which is pretty great.
That's neat. I got to look into the Lego versions. I saw the NES, but I didn't know they even made a Lego Atari. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, getting off of children's toys and getting kind of back on track here. For those who have maybe been hiding under a rock or living on the moon for the last 5-6 years, tell us a little bit more about Sophos and what Sophos does.
Yeah, so Sophos, we have an exceptionally broad portfolio of security products and services, and that's really the goal. Is we want to be able to enable organizations to invest in the types of security products that they need, those different control points across every domain of their environment. And we also acknowledge that increasingly organizations may not have the ability, or in some cases the desire, to have to use all of those tools on their own to recruit, train, retain employees who are going to make use of that technology, because the technology is constantly changing in line with the constantly changing threat landscape. And so that's why we have increasingly been offering services, most notably managed detection and response, to help organizations really derive the most value possible from those technology investments.
So, and you use the term right there, managed detection and response. I have to imagine that there may be a bunch of MSPs out there that are not really security savvy, or just looking to kind of build out a more advanced security stack, and may not have any idea what MDR really is. So, if you could take a couple of minutes and just kind of set the groundwork of what MDR is and what it does.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's kind of a textbook definition of what MDR is, which is, it has to be a 24/7 service delivered by humans to detect and respond to threats that tools really themselves might not be able to detect on their own. So that's really kind of the textbook definition. Now, it gets into all kinds of variants of that. It's really a range of capabilities that you've got human beings who are not only able to use the tools to detect threats that tools can find, but also do things like threat hunting, which is designed to detect threats that have circumvented every security control that exists today. So it can be a range of things. And to your point, it's still something that not every organization has made that investment yet. It's still a fairly nascent market. As much as vendors talk about MDR, Gartner coined the term only in 2016. So there's a lot of people who are not terribly familiar with it. That's compounded by the fact that there are many different ways that vendors offer managed detection and response services. Some of them offer it, and it's built purely upon a EDR tool. So they've deployed an endpoint detection and response tool, and now they have this managed services overlay. We're going to look at the alerts that EDR tool generates, and we're going to maybe take some actions on some of them, and some of them we're going to send you a notification. All the way to the other end of the spectrum, which is where we exist, where we can take data from any security data source that you have, virtually anything in your environment, correlate that data so that we can find, here's, similar these activities that are maybe coming from your email tool or from your firewall or for your endpoint are all indicative of the same attacker behavior. And then we're going to actually do the work to investigate, understand the nature of that alert or that particular threat. And then we're going to do the full-scale incident response to not only contain and neutralize the threat, but also identify what the root cause was. Because at the end of the day, if you're not finding out what was the kind of point of origination, the initial access for that threat or for that attack, what are you doing? You got to address the root cause if you're going to prevent recurrence and you're going to improve your posture. So that's kind of a lot of words, but that's part of the reason that's difficult for buyers to say, I'm going to buy an MDR vendor, because it's very much about what technology do you have? What capabilities do you have? What people do you have on your internal team? And most importantly, what are your objectives as a security program and as a business? Because it should be about enabling the business to do. And I know Bob talks a lot about this. It's about how do you invest in security tools and services in a way that is going to help your business perform better, achieve the objectives that you need to achieve.
So I've got to believe that the way like you said, there are a lot of different ways to consume MDR. I got to believe the way that an enterprise IT organization typically does that is different from the way an MSP typically does. So when an MSP is working with Sophos on MDR, what are they doing? What are they typically outsourcing to you folks? How do you sort of partner up with an MSP on MDR?
Yeah, it's a great point. You nailed it. And there's a couple different ways that we work with MSPs, and it's different from how we interact with large enterprise organizations as well as with small and mid-sized organizations. But for MSPs in particular, there's really kind of three modes that we can work with them. One is that MSP has its core business model, its core competency, the types of things that it wants to deliver to its end user customers. And they want to be able to offer those customers a full managed detection response offering, but they want to do so in a way that doesn't force them to have to build an entire security operations center and hire 50 to 100 to 200 analysts to provide that 24/7 specialized support that an MDR service needs to be able to provide. So for those MSPs, they don't want to make that investment, but they want to unlock that revenue stream. They want to make sure, and they want to add that value to their portfolio that they can offer to customers. So in that case, MSP partners with Sophos, we provide that MDR service for their customers, and the MSP continues to do the work that they do, and we work in close collaboration with that MSP. Another model, increasingly, MSPs are offering MDR to customers. They're already doing some of this work. And so in that case, it's really more of a staff augmentation or skill set augmentation, where Sophos MDR works with that MSP to say, okay, you want to monitor and respond to threats, maybe it's over a span of certain hours, 9 to 5, our MSP is going to have that covered. But it's difficult to find people who want to work those second and third shifts, and we want to provide 24/7 coverage. So, hey, Sophos, can you provide that MDR service during those times? Or maybe we're highly competent in responding to most threats, but we need a little extra help for something that might be a little more aggressive, a little bit more, might require more specialized skills. Or again, we can detect and respond to stuff, but we really don't have the time or the resources to conduct threat hunts to find the things that tools might be missing. So in that case, it's Sophos MDR working in collaboration with the MSP's MDR solution just to provide a more complete, more scalable, more efficient offering. And then the third mode is MSPs who are delivering MDR. They want to continue to build out that practice, and they want to take advantage of the Sophos XDR platform, which is the underpinning technology of our MDR service, to deliver MDR, again, in a more scalable, more efficient way. So it could be have Sophos MDR provide the MDR service for your customers. It can be work with Sophos MDR to complement or supplement what you're capable of doing on your own. Or it could be just give us the tools, the XDR platform, and we'll deliver MDR in much the same way as Sophos MDR can.
In any of those models, for people who are concerned about this kind of thing, is there direct contact between Sophos and the end user, or does everything kind of funnel through the MSP?
Yeah, when we designed the service, we had a couple things in mind, and one of them is that type of optionality. So we want to give MSPs the option to say, hey, for certain threats, you can engage directly with our end users. For certain threats, alert our team, our MSP team, and we will be the ones who are communicating with the customer. So we can accommodate either use case. It's really dependent on what the MSP is looking for or what the customer is looking for. We want to provide those options so that it's really the best fit for them and their business.
Are there any sort of missed opportunities or mistakes you sometimes see MSPs who use an MDR service make, just in terms of really kind of getting maximum value out of the service? Do you have any tips in terms of how to optimize that relationship with the MDR provider?
Yeah, so some of the mistakes that MSPs will make would be working with an MDR partner that isn't providing them the full scope of really what should be included as part of an MDR service. There are a lot of managed threat hunting services or MDR services that really do little more than send a notification, right? They will be monitoring your environment, but then they send a notification to say, okay, hey, we detected this. We're not really sure what it is. We recommend you conduct an investigation to figure out the full, scope and nature of that threat. And then here's some recommendations for what you should do after that. So it really just becomes a situation where the MSP has invested in what they hoped would be a partner that's taking more workload off of their plate, and they're actually having to do even more. They're having to do more than they anticipated. So that's one of them, is just making sure that you are finding an MDR partner that is compatible with the way that you work and the objectives that you're trying to achieve for your business and for your end user clients. Another one is really just, MDR it's being able to deliver that service. It's predicated on having human beings. It's not something, it is much less scalable than technology can be. So some MSPs are wanting to take advantage of the opportunity that exists in MDR because it's one of the fastest growing spaces in the market right now. And so they think, hey, let's fund this and build this internally. And then they hit all the same scalability, all the same hiring problems that every organization faces when it comes to finding and retaining security talent. So it becomes this kind of point where maybe they've built the service, but they're not achieving the margin that they hope to because they have to keep hiring people and training people in order to scale it and to be able to get that incremental revenue. So some of it is, if it's an area that you want to provide that MDR value to your customers, maybe it is better to work with a partner than it is to build that solution internally. And that's not the case for every MSP. Again, some are delivering MDR at a very high level. They have figured out how to build and scale their program in a very efficient way. And that really works for them. And then it's just a matter of, do we have the right tools, and are there other ways to complement the service offering that we have with maybe a service partner that's providing that backstop, that's extra set of eyes for us.
Do you, Bob is a pioneer in co-managed IT. We were talking about delivery models before. Does MDR work any different? How does it fit into a co-managed IT kind of scenario?
So I'll jump in here because I really don't care what Eric says. So let's talk about the three words. Managed. So someone is going to be managing this situation, this collection of tools and services and all that. Detection. We see stuff either before, while it's happening, however you want to call it, and then response. We're going to respond to it. I mean, I hate to get stupid on this, but Eric is boring the tears out of me. By going into these different models and all that. And if we talk about it from a direct enterprise situation, a co-managed, whatever, the bottom line is we need to detect this stuff early and effectively. We need to find out when bad things are approaching, happening, going on, whatever, however you define bad things across the entire IT platform for an organization. And then it needs to be responded to. Now, whether we talk about the three layers of responsibility here being the provider, Sophos in this case, the managed service provider, and then the internal IT. And in some cases, it's directly to internal IT because it's an enterprise organization, or the MSP is doing the whole thing or whatever. But the thing that's nice about what Sophos is doing is we're going to give those services, the tools of the trade, the whatever, and then figure out who the party is that's going to be responsible for managing it, with Sophos being available as a backstop. And whether that backstop is based on time availability or skills availability or whatever, but at the end of the day, we are still managing, we're detecting, and we're responding as a collective. So it can position itself very well for an internal IT. And I would also add, it doesn't have to be an enterprise level internal IT. It could be that one person IT person who, just because that person can't do everything, they can't be everything, they can't understand anything the exact same way that an MSP can. So there's that flexibility, scalability, and almost pointability, which should be a word, so that you can identify and manage the role appropriately, basically according to the skill and who they have on staff.
So you're tapping into the service in different ways for different customers, it sounds like. On the co-managed clients, there's one model, and another one maybe for the ones that you are fully.
We have that ability. Now, that said, we don't do a whole heck of a lot on the enterprise level. Okay, we're more on that SMB side. We're on up to 500, 750 seats, that kind of fun stuff. So from that aspect of it, if someone's going to tell me I have on staff the security people necessary to do an MDR type of management, my first question is going to be, really, tell me about it. And are you going to have that person 6 months from now when somebody else is offering them twice the money? And can that person handle every situation? Do they take lunch? Do they do this? Do they do that? So from my aspect of it, I look at it, I want Sophos to handle it, but I have that option to change it owing to circumstances and the like. And the same thing as we develop our team and become more and more security effective and knowledgeable and all that kind of good stuff, which means they don't involve me in these things. But as we do that, we have that option to change and mature that relationship, but with the same tool set and the same resources behind it. So we've got that flexibility, so we don't have to have this one size fits all for all situations and all circumstances, whether it be for us as a single MSP with multiple clients and different levels of maturity, or multiple MSPs with multiple clients and multiple levels of maturity. It works either way.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Bob. And apologies for boring you. That was not my intent.
You're doing it again.
It's the timbre of my voice. It works again for putting the kids to bed, and you as well. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's the other part of this is the service can change as your business also adapts and changes itself. So we've seen this with certain MSP partners that will want Sophos MDR to be handling 99% of the work. But as they continue to build out their own internal managed services practices, that relationship can evolve, and we can maybe do different types of work for them that is, again, complementing what they do. So again, it could start with, hey, Sophos, we're giving you the keys to the car, do all that cool detection and response stuff that you do. Maybe they make some internal hires on the MSP side, and now they can do some of that internally. So then it becomes, okay, Sophos, contain the threats for me. We'll do the response, the root cause analysis, that work. Or then it could even turn into, hey, Sophos, be that extra set of eyes for me. Let me know things that I need to look at so my team doesn't have to waste time doing that. And so we've seen that change in both directions. Yeah. People starting on one end and moving to another.
And you can see how it will go in either direction, depending upon if you've got an MSP who is comfortable with the smaller clients, but now they're operating into the big leagues, as well as an MSP who wasn't comfortable with clients, but they've developed the skills, so now they are. So go either way. And from our standpoint, and this is more of a metaphor or simile than like, one of our best selling points when we talk to clients, potential clients, is for us to say, hey, if you want to mature into a co-manage, we can do that. And this is across the board. Or if you want to start with a co-manage and mature into a pure, we can do that. So to be able to do the same thing on the security side is a benefit for us to take, to basically say to our clients, hey, if things go different, we can still adapt, and we'll still be bringing the same tool set and the same competencies to the game.
Some of what we've been talking about kind of implies an answer to this, like flexibility, might be an area to get into. But Eric, if you were to advise people in the audience, what are the 3, 4, 5 questions you should definitely ask a prospective MDR service provider before signing a contract with anyone? What would you recommend?
Again, without boring us to tears, we have to now put that at the end of every question.
I will do my best to answer something inherently boring in the most entertaining.
Doing it
again. So number one is for most organizations, they're not going to be in a position where they want to rip and replace all their technology around a single vendor. And some MDR vendors require you to do exactly that. Now, some vendors want to do that. They want to consolidate around a single vendor, or at least fewer vendors. So find a vendor that can do both. Can you consolidate around a tool set, or can you work with the technology investments that my business has already made and help me get more value from those tools? So that would be one, is how can you deliver MDR using the technology I've made, or how can you deliver MDR using a integrated tool set represented in your own portfolio? Number two is the response part. Ironically, and Bob spelled out the managed detection and response part, there are very few MDR vendors that actually do like a capital R response. Many of them are very much based on looking across your alerts and then notifying you of things that require more work on your part. It's very much, looking at your watch and telling you what time it is. And so a lot of people become disappointed in that type of offering. So find an MDR vendor that can demonstrate clearly that they are going to take action on your behalf to not only, again, neutralize that threat, eject it from your environment, do cool cyber stuff, but also identify the root cause so you can prevent recurrence from happening again in the future. Those are probably two of the bigger ones that we see most frequently. Or to add a third, it's how do they engage with me or with my end user customers? What is that type of communication? Because again, it is a service, right? So if I'm paying for a service, I don't want to be getting 100 automated responses from a tool that you have deployed in my environment. I want to be hearing from a human. I want to get a notification from a human that's explaining to me in very human terms what's happening in my environment, what you've done to take care of it, and if there's anything more that I need to do to take care of it from my end.
So I'd like to ask, so Bob, I was going to ask you real quick, and you can give two more, but I want to relate it to, your search for an MDR, because you ultimately landed on Sophos as your partner. So what were the things that you looked for, and what were the things that kind of guided you to that direction?
So the two other things that I would put on, I think I heard Eric, I don't know, but one is, what are you doing differently today than you were doing 2 years ago? Okay, because there's so many vendors out there who had a great product 2 years ago. But we all know, and there's so many of our clients who thought they had security based on 2 year old definition, or their current MSP was, hasn't done anything different. This is such a fast changing technology world, threats, everything. What are you doing differently today than 2 years ago? And to show me that you've got a path moving for the next 2 years. How are you adapting? Because if all you've got is you've got this great one trick pony that is here in 2023, but that's it. We got nothing more coming down the road. We got a problem. Or if it hasn't changed significantly in the past 2 years, we got a problem because the bad guys have, and they're going to continue to. So that's one thing you look for. The other thing is, how are you going to help me communicate to both my existing clients and potential clients about the value of this service in ways that non-IT people will understand? How are you going to help me create that business value conversation? Now, insurance companies are helping us do that. Compliance requirements are helping us do that. But help me do that for these services as well. And that's something that Sophos has done a great job on. And I'll be honest, we've been with Sophos for about 10 years, 12 years or so. And there've been a couple of times I've been ready to can them. Not today, because of a couple of issues where we've seen, boy, it hasn't moved forward. And I've gone to them and they basically peeled away the curtains and said, here's our goal. Here's what we're doing. Here's our time frame. Cool. You're taking care of these issues, or even issues I didn't know. I see that. I see it's on the board, and they're actually pretty good on keeping up with their timeframes and their goals and objectives. The last time we had this conversation was like 5-6 years ago, so it's been a while. But it's that momentum they've got of moving forward that was compelling to me.
One we were talking about questions to ask and attributes to look for, and I should mention, actually, I mean, you guys had a managed threat response product that came out in 2019, but the full-blown sort of MDR was released last November. And when that happened, one of the things you guys emphasized in the press release that I received was that this is the first or one of the first products to have, and I'm quoting here from the press release, vendor agnostic telemetry from third-party security technologies. We were talking before about, do you want a single vendor environment or a multi-vendor environment? What is it that you're doing there in terms of third-party telemetry, and how does it maybe differentiate what you guys do in MDR?
Yeah, so let me provide another boring statistic, but about 45% of all attacks right now are multi-stage. That is, attackers are attacking from multiple angles, and they're executing an attack strategy that might cross across email, work into your network, work across individual devices, endpoints. And so the reason for the ability to be able to pull in data from multiple sources is because you need to be able to look at multiple vantage points. You can't just, it's no longer possible to just use an endpoint security tool and detect things only that are happening on your endpoint, right? You can't just rely on your firewall to only block things that are trying to come through the network. You need to have these different vantage points and be able to connect the dots between them. So when we expanded our offering in November, that was all about, we can do this now with our Sophos technology portfolio. We've been able to do that for a number of years. What we wanted to do next was, now if you have other investments in non-Sophos technologies, we can take the data from those tools, integrate it into our ecosystem, again, connect those dots between the different types of behaviors that we're detecting, and make that much more efficient. We can have full visibility across your environment, endpoint, your devices in your environment, email, network, identity, any area in your ecosystem. So that was what is, again, still something that vendors don't often do. A lot of them kind of, it's kind of, they're using one vantage point in order to detect and respond to things, and that's just not going to be that's not going to be something that we're going to be able to continue to do, because attackers are getting increasingly more sophisticated.
So let me explain that what Eric just said, that in ways that an MSP will understand.
Please.
You go take over a client, and the client already has investments in technology that is not your standard stack. Okay, but they just bought that firewall 2 years ago, and you've got a couple of people on, I'm talking about the smaller MSPs, but you got a couple of people on staff. You can manage that technology. You can operate it, you can configure it, but you can't necessarily protect it. All right, so this service, by being somewhat vendor agnostic, essentially gives you that level of comfort that these products, even though you're not 100% up on them yourself as far as your tech skill set, you can still have the level of security and the level of monitoring and management and managed detection and response with that solution.
I'm going to need Bob as my translator just on a regular basis.
No, it said no one ever.
He speaks fluent MSP. One of the questions that he said people should ask, and it's a great one, is what are you doing now that you weren't doing 2 years ago? Which then kind of begs the question, what might Sophos or other MDR providers be doing 2 years from now that they aren't doing today? So as you look kind of down the road at what MDR, is going to do next, needs to do, where you kind of see it going, what does the future of MDR kind of look like to you?
Yeah, I mean, so some of it is just kind of catching up to where we need to be today, which is, I think, they're increasingly the way that we are able to provide that kind of technology agnostic service, or as part of an integrated solution. I guarantee within the next 6 months, you're going to see another MDR vendor announce their ability to do the exact same thing. So we are going to see some standardization in the market of vendors catching up to that point to be able to provide that same level of capability. Because as Bob said, that's a very real scenario of, again, you can't expect organizations to rip and replace their technology. You need to be able to work with what they have and on their own terms. There's a commercial reality to that. So I think you're going to continue to see that. I also think you're going to continue to see an expansion of how far MDR vendors can do in terms of responding to threats without the need for customers to have to do some actions on their own. So we're going to see this through advancements in machine learning and automation and AI that's going to enable analysts to do more. Now, the one thing that I would say is you see a lot of people, I just committed the violation myself. You see a lot of marketing stuff about artificial intelligence and machine learning, and it's becoming incredibly more mainstream due to certain technological advancements. Always ask questions about, if a vendor brings up those things, ask them, okay, well, tell me what that actually means. Like, what is the actual meat behind that stance? Because there are a number of vendors out there who will say, oh, we use AI for everything. And our goal is to eliminate the need for a human being. We are not close to being able to do that in cybersecurity. The thing that we are closest to, the thing that we are already doing, is using automation to basically take care of the rote minutia type tasks that analysts have to do. There's a lot of just manual. Everyone thinks of cybersecurity as just being, it's what they see in the movies, right? It's this cool cyber ninja type stuff. There's a lot of just manual clicking, looking through things, looking in one console, looking in another console. What we do is automate that stuff so that our humans can do the things that only a human being can do. So I think that's what we're going to see more of, is AI that is assisting human beings, making human beings more effective. But any claim that like, oh, we're going to do all of this with AI, that should raise a big flag for you.
Yeah, the analogy I use on that one is like someone says, is this building safe? And yes, we use rivets. I mean, the bottom line is it's how the tools are used to accomplish what goal. Because it's like, a few years ago, we're going to the cloud. What does that mean? Right. We're doing client server. What does that mean? We have end-tier systems. What does that mean? Now I'm dating myself. All of those kind of things. It gets down to what is the result of using these technologies.
So we're talking about 2-year time frames and looking down the road, and according to Gartner, 30% of organizations across sizes are using MDR in some way now, and 2 years from now, 2025, that will double to 60%. So as you said before, Eric, this is obviously a very fast-growing market. I mean, this is probably where we should have started the conversation. I mean, what is it about this moment, and maybe the threat landscape, or whatever it is that is making MDR such a growth area in security?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. I know Bob has some thoughts on this, but we were kind of talking about this the other day, Bob and I, that is. There are, as things become more difficult to manage, as there's more technology, right? Every time there's a new threat, there's a new technology or a new capability or a new skill that a human has to learn to be able to stop that threat. At some point, even if the organization is capable of managing security entirely on their own, and some organizations are, if you're well-resourced, you're big enough, you can probably staff that 24/7 capability with specialized skill sets within your organization. Most organizations can't. And even among those who can, does it make sense for them to continue doing it? Is that really a smart use of resources and funds, that as we have this constantly changing landscape with new tools, new threats, new things that need to be done, do you want to really continue managing that internally? And I was talking about this with Bob the other day, and kind of equating it to 100 years ago, you had manufacturing plants that, factories that would build their own power plants, because that's how they needed to get power. That was the most efficient way, is we're going to build this power plant and we're going to draw power from it for our factory. And then electricity became a public utility. Did it make sense for those factories to keep building power plants? Of course not. It was inefficient. It was a bad use of resources. We saw the same thing more recently with data storage, right? And computing power. Used to be, you would stand up a bunch of data centers to store all the things that you needed to store, right? Organizations would spend tons of money on that. And then AWS comes along. Now I'm going to put it in the cloud. Now there's no reason for me to support and fund that infrastructure. And so that's the same thing here. We're seeing this. This is the term that we use at Sophos, is cybersecurity as a service. It doesn't make sense for most organizations to build this capability internally, to invest in it continually, have a group that is purposely designed to deal with this dynamic threat. Have them do that work for you so you can focus on things that are more lucrative for your business. So that's, I think that's part of the reason that you're seeing so many organizations move in that direction, because it's just no longer operationally or financially logical to keep investing in this thing that's constantly changing and requires new investments every single day.
Yeah.
Bob, anything else to add to that?
I would say essentially every time somebody figures out a different way to use IT to accomplish business goals, whether it be internal, external, integrated, whatever, the bad guys can find a way to take advantage of that. So there's all sorts of inventions, whether we say through AI, ChatGPT, whether we talk about it through heterogeneous data sources between organizations, whether we talk about it through much more collaboration efforts, all of those represent opportunities for the bad guys. The business model of the bad guys as entrepreneurs is not going away. There is no threat to them to make them stop. Okay. And there's not going to be for several years. So they are going to constantly evolve, and our industry is going to have to constantly evolve. And just like, our techs today don't have to worry about memory cards or graphic cards or, which hard drive to put in, all of that stuff, it's commoditized, it's handled, it's all done in the background. The operating systems are doing it. Services like Sophos are going to more and more become we really don't have to worry about that, but we do have to worry about this now. So there's that evolution thing that's going to happen, and the MSP has to evolve with that, or you are going to become either ridiculously low price commodity, or you're out of business, or legally worse. So,
yeah, and another element, and Bob, you touched on this earlier, but it's business factors that are more dependent on success in building a cybersecurity program than they used to be. Things like insurance.
yeah.
Right. Most organizations need to have cyber liability insurance, and it's no longer as easy as it used to be even just 2 years ago to become insurable. You have to be able to demonstrate that you have the right capabilities, that you've made the right investments, and that you're actually using those investments effectively. So that's why, yeah.
Well, and the add-on I was going to give is kind of like back in the 70s or 80s when OSHA first started. In order for a company to be able to insure their workplace against people hurting themselves in the shop floor or whatever, they had to put in place certain things that were required before the insurance carriers would handle it. We're seeing the same thing happen, but it's happening where it's not just you have to put a handholds on that stairway. It's a lot more involved and technical, but it's kind of the same metaphor.
Involved in technical, and also usually requires a lot of manpower to monitor and operate as well. So, and that's a very interesting angle, one that we probably don't have time to get into, but there seems to be like no end of new tools you have to do in order to protect customers, and that is a huge resource problem to think about going forward. And I think you're right. That's why companies like Sophos, which can serve as a backstop for that, are a really good partner to look for, because they can help ease some of that burden.
Plus, they have socks.
Like on their feet, or
no, they have them on their feet. Well, actually, I don't know. I have not checked on that.
I
have about 20 different pairs of socks from them. So.
no vendors can wear sandals in your view? Is that how it goes?
I have my standards. I have to stand by them, sir.
That's awesome. So, Eric, I got time for one more question, and it's probably the most important question that you're going to get asked today. Because as a fan of Back to the Future, no doubt the first one is probably your favorite movie. And if it's not, that is an interesting conversation to have. But I find that people are very split between episodes or parts 2 and 3. So in your mind, which Back to the Future sequel reigns superior? Go.
It's 2. It's an easy one for me. I'm a big fan of 2. 1 is by far, as you say, that's the best. 2, second best. I mean, I feel like that's a trajectory for most trilogies, right? Like, the Ninja Turtles live action movies that came out in the 90s when some of us were kids, not Bob. Bob was, don't even want to think about how old he was, but yeah, no one goes back and watches Ninja Turtles 3. Right, you do so 1, true. You do Secret of the Ooze, and you call it a day. You don't even acknowledge the third one. Back to the Future 3 is not that bad. It's actually, I think it's pretty good, but to me it pales in comparison to 1 and 2.
I like the visuals of the second one. I mean, it's all kind of one story that kind of gets clumped together. But I found that Christopher Lloyd was a much more human character in 3, and that's one of the reasons that it really draws me to that one specifically. Yeah. Even though it's like a Western old school, and they didn't have all the cool like futuristic stuff that they did in the second one. But there's an argument for 3, because I thought it was a very human movie. Had much more emotion to it than 2 did.
Yeah, I'll concede that point. I mean, I'll be honest. I haven't watched 2 or 3 in a number of years, and it's probably one of those things where my nostalgia from having watched 2 when I was younger, probably just like kind of messing with my perception of how good it actually was. But yeah, no, I think that's a fair statement.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Watch them when you're older, because I was probably in your camp originally, but I kind of lean 3, I think, these days. Plus the ZZ Top song, because that's in that one scene where they're playing music in the town square or whatever.
Yeah, they do the guitar spin thing.
Yeah, that's like ZZ Top. They like completely modified one of their songs, and that's like one of the coolest banjo-y kind of riffs ever. So anyway, yeah, good stuff. Don't forget to later on go rehydrate a pizza and celebrate your appearance being here on Channel Pro Weekly. Anyway, Eric, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. Thank you so much again to Sophos for sponsoring this special edition, because without sponsors like Sophos, we can't do a lot of these kind of special edition episodes, and it's just really great when they do. Of course, please, Eric, let people know, anybody who wants to get in touch with you and or network with you, find you, where can they do that?
Yeah, on LinkedIn, Twitter, all the things that you would expect. My name is Eric Kokonas. There's only one of me that exists in the world, so you don't have to worry about, is this the right guy? No, I'm literally the only one.
Perfect. And of course, if somebody wanted to learn more about the MDR solutions that Sophos offers, where can they go?
Yeah, Sophos.com. We've got a ton of information and resources. We produce a lot of research on the threat landscape. We've got some new stuff coming up here very, very soon. Or talk to Bob. Bob
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And they also make a lot of materials that you can actually just hand over. Some you can rebrand, but you can hand over to either the internal IT or the management at the organization that helps you with that conversation about making sure that they're taking security seriously.
And if you'd like to hire Bob for his MSP translation services, I'm sure he's available for that, billable by the hour. So make sure you reach out to him for that as well. Eric, again, thank you so much for being on. We are going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to wrap up the special edition episode in part 3. On the other side, Bob will be joining us. We'll break down the show. We'll have a little bit of fun. You never know what's going to happen. Sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't. And that's why you always got to stick around. We will be right back. And we are back now with part 3 of this special edition episode sponsored by Sophos. That was really an awesome and, as predicted, a hilarious interview. I was laughing my butt off the entire time. Bob, you really cracked me up.
It's what I try to do. It was when I was trying to be funny, right? Not when I was trying to be serious.
I'll have to go back and review just to make sure, but I think you hit it on the head. But no, it was really good. It did not bore me to tears. We covered a lot of ground. Big thanks for Eric coming on and doing that with us. It was really good. Rich, any highlights that you took out of that?
Well, you know that Bob is a great Sophos partner because he basically called a Sophos guy boring over and over and over again, and it was a-okay. So yeah, they value that relationship.
Well, and the neat thing is and you guys know this from doing the podcast and all that there are some people who can take that and run with it. And other people are like, huh? What? And I love it when people can take it and run with it. And he obviously did. And that was great. And you guys did too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he definitely did. But it was also nice that you guys knew each other already. So it was a great dynamic and a really good conversation. Bob, anything that he said or that you talked about that you wanted to stress or highlight?
No, I really wasn't listening to him. It was so freaking boring. No, I mean, we enjoy the relationship and all that kind of fun stuff, but it gets back to that whole, what is the MDR? What is M, what is D, what is R? And I think they've got the flexibility so that the M part can go to any of the parties, whether it be internal IT, the MSP, or Sophos. And that's one of the things that I absolutely love about that whole product and that whole process is that kind of flexibility without compromising what the product does.
Absolutely. Very, very good stuff. And big thanks to them. Big thanks to them for sponsoring this special edition too. So that was pretty awesome. But we're not done. Bob, we're going to have a little bit of fun. In fact, we're going to have a little bit of Star Trek fun because you have a museum pick for us.
I have a museum pick for you.
I would love to see it.
So I don't know. The museum, it's not really a museum, but there's actually if you go to StarTrekTour.com, there actually is, and this is in Lake George region, an original setup of the original TV series bridge. And for those of you who are true Star Trek fans, which are the only kind, some people actually did additional episodes based on the original series. And they're actually very good, called Star Trek Continues. With obviously different people playing Kirk, Spock, and so on and so forth. And they've turned that original bridge into a museum where you can go tour and take a look at the place. I have not been there, nor do I have plans to do so, but I think if you're a big Star Trek fan, you should try to go there.
That does sound really interesting. I didn't know that some people try to make new episodes based
And
on
I got to tell you, they're actually really good. They use the same music, the same type of camera. It is the exact same sets. There's good stuff there.
Super neat. So you have some hardware picks, kind of Star Trek related. So museum in the sense that the original Star Trek was a long time ago, but I think these are probably are these original pieces that you have, or are these replicas
that I have?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, these are not museum pieces. These are used day to day. Okay, because there are some times where you need to take care of security issues.
So watch out, folks. For those listening, Bob is holding up a phaser. He's holding up a phaser, so hands up, everyone, just in case.
Absolutely. And then we have my communicator. And I didn't think of this ahead because I didn't know, the topic was going to be. These are actually working, not working enough as far as the phaser goes, but the communicator is actually a Bluetooth-enabled device that I can connect to my phone and use. I'm not that sad of a person.
That's super cool. So how many can it link with? Lots of them, or just two?
What's that?
Can you have the communicators? So you said that they can talk to each other. Can you?
No. The communicator is a Bluetooth, so it connects to the phone, and I can use this as my speaker.
Oh, you can use that as speaker. Okay.
Right.
I thought like if you have two of them, like they could talk to each other through the communicator, which would be pretty cool.
That would be cool. No, but this also has voices from the original cast doing, Spock to Enterprise, whatever. That sort of thing. So, yes, my sad life.
So I'll point out one thing before we move on to the versus game that we're gonna play, which is gonna be Star Trek related. But it's funny how when you hold up those props and they're like perfectly modeled, exactly what it was like on the show. But I caught like this Netflix special where they actually talked about the history of Star Trek toys and how like when the original Star Trek series came out and they were making toys for it, they had nothing to do with the show and they looked like nothing that was on the show.
Right.
So have you seen that before?
I have not seen that specifically, but I'm familiar with it because the whole idea was, and especially when you start taking a look at it from an overseas standpoint, I'm just going to, I'm going to market the words. I'm going to market that because in so many cases, brand awareness was not what it is today. I mean, brand awareness, what we normally just consider, I'm aware of the brand. People would have considered that as you're overboard, you're nuts on the whole thing, 30 or 40 years ago. And I think Star Trek's an example of that, and probably Walt Disney as well, and other things, and especially when they're Americanized. Does the people overseas, do they have any clue as to what they're talking about? And actually and go do a YouTube search on knockoff films. There's some of the weirdest Batman films or science fiction Star Trek films or the like that are just long and so ridiculously low budget, but people watched it because it had that word or that name or that brand in it.
Yeah. Do you collect any other Star Trek memorabilia other than just those two? Or
no, I mean I've got but this one was given to me, so I've got a nice little Enterprise, all that kind of fun stuff, and I've got some games. I actually have a Doctor Who sonic screwdriver and the like. I'm past the time of that kind of collection stuff or the like, so I've just got a few things. Really, I basically try to take my love of Star Trek and my love of annoying people and try to merge those two. Is really the best thing that I do. And if you actually watch our videos, you'll see it is not infrequent that I will work in some snarky remark about Star Wars. Because those people are just they're adorable. They're great.
Everybody's got to have goals, Bob, and the goal to annoy is a hard one. Yeah,
absolutely.
Good for you. All right, so we're gonna get a short game in because I know you love the original Star Trek, so we're gonna play a little game of versus. Where Rich, what's the angle you want to take to this? Like, if you could, favorite character, kind of pit the characters together.
We're going. So for anyone who is new to the game of versus, basically Matt and I will alternate for a few rounds here, and we will present Bob with two choices. You got to pick which one of the two you prefer, and we're going to do it here around characters from the original 1960s Star Trek series. And yeah, this will be interesting. I think goal here, my thought, Matt, is we start with the lesser characters. We pose some very difficult choices to Bob, and we work our way up to the principals.
I like it. All right, Rich, go ahead, kick us off.
So, for example, we're just going to start it out right here. You got to pick one,
Okay.
Bob, Sulu or Chekhov.
I need to get somewhere. Sulu. I mean,
Okay.
Chekhov, yeah, he did some navigation or security or whatever, but Sulu got us there.
All right.
Yeah.
So we
Plus,
got it.
he's a fencer.
Yeah.
And that makes a difference. All right. So we've got Sulu. So let's go Sulu versus Uhura.
So I don't like talking with people. I think it's a waste of time. But the question is it Uhura because she will talk to the people for me versus Sulu because then I don't have to talk to people. I'm going to stick with Sulu.
Sticking with Sulu. All right, Rich.
So this might be too easy, or it might insert a little interesting angle here. But let's go with Sulu versus random guy in a red shirt.
Well, first of all, you have to look at this. Is this because someone is shooting at me? In which case, I want the red shirt guy because we know he's going to be the one to get shot. Okay. Versus, is this person going to help me accomplish anything in life? In which case, I got to go with Sulu because the red guy isn't going to be around long enough. I'm gonna stick with Sulu. I'm gonna stay loyal.
Staying loyal to Sulu. And it's so true. It's like you would hear, all right, the landing party is going to consist of Sulu, Chekhov, and Lieutenant Abrams, and it's like the random red shirt guy. And you're like, that guy is gonna go.
Here's a piece of trivia. You know the guy who was doing the commercials all the time for I don't always drink blah blah blah, but when I do, I drink blah blah blah. He played a red shirt in one of the original Star Trek series episodes. He did not die, obviously, because he did the commercials later on.
He's that much more interesting now.
There you go. The world's most interesting man. Yeah.
All right. So Sulu's still there. I'm gonna throw you a curveball. Because it wasn't a main cast member, but a recurring one, but a good one. So Sulu or Nurse Christine Chapel.
Not trying to be a founding member of the Hikaru Sulu fan club here. Okay. But Chapel was always only there because of somebody else's need or the like. And partially because she was a nurse or the like. But she was rarely critical. So I'm gonna stick with Sulu.
Sticking Sulu still. Rich, I think we're gonna have to go into some of the upper echelon characters to dethrone Sulu.
I was gonna say it's time to go big now. We've messed around with some of the minor characters. Right. So here it comes, Bob. Sulu versus Scotty.
Scotty. Yeah, Scotty.
Hands
I mean,
down.
The miracle worker. Whatever you needed done, he was the guy who got it done, and he could fly. I'm sure he could pilot the Enterprise if need be. Interesting fact about Scotty, he actually was missing half of one of his fingers that, if I remember correctly, he lost on D-Day.
Oh.
And the D-Day part could be, I may be mistaken on that one, but he had actually was a decorated veteran from Canada, and that was not his normal accent. And he's the guy who invented the Klingon language.
Interesting. Wow, you do know a lot about Star Trek.
Or I'm making this all up and hoping you never find out.
Well, we do have the internet, so we could probably spot check it. But right now, we'll take you for your word. All right. So I went with the nurse. Now let's go to the primary doctor, Scotty versus McCoy.
Now, is this because this really depends, because McCoy is much more in line with me. Okay, that whole I'm going to complain no matter what. But I'm going to stick with Scotty for the same reason that I did not go with Uhura, because McCoy is always talking with people, he's taking care of people, he's dealing with people. Scotty's dealing with the equipment and the machinery. I'm with Scotty. I'm going to stick with Scotty.
All right, Scotty's there. Rich, I know we're moving up. There's only a couple people left to pit against Scotty.
I think people know where we're going now. Yeah, we're getting into the critical rounds here. So Scotty versus Spock.
Almost the anti-Scotty in a sense.
Yeah, gonna say. So I'm gonna stick with Scotty. I'm gonna go against the grain and stick with Scotty simply because it's too easy to just go Spock. Scotty was underappreciated. It is time for us to do something about that. And I'm gonna start right now.
All right, so let's see if Scotty can maintain his
Oh,
position against the captain of captains, Scotty or Kirk.
Kirk.
Yeah.
It's gotta be Kirk. Because at the end of the day, he was Kirk. And it's one of those, and you can get into that whole, and again, you gotta remember, it's the 60s, it's the late 60s. And there was his character was so good at presenting both the hero, but then actually the understanding guy as well. And Shatner was actually freaking brilliant. In some ways a caricature of himself, but that kind of what he brought, and it was kind of what the guy was. So yeah, I'm going to stick with Kirk.
So I don't know if we're going to find a character that will dethrone Kirk unless we go outside of the original series. Although the guy that sold the Tribbles might give Kirk a run of his money. I was also going to say Kirk versus Khan. But I don't think Khan was in the original TV series. I think he was.
Yes, he was.
He was.
Yeah.
Oh, he was.
Khan was in. So what you could do is you could go Kirk versus Captain Pike. Although Captain Pike was only in the two-parter that they did, the Menagerie, as far as the original series go. But that was Jeffrey Hunter, the guy who was originally supposed to be the captain of the Enterprise.
Interesting. Well, let's say Kirk versus Khan, because I didn't know. I'm Rich. I'm taking a bonus one just to see if we can dethrone Kirk.
Yeah.
Because Khan is a pretty darn cool character.
He was a very darn cool character, but he was also very one-dimensional. In terms of that first the episode that he was in, he basically was being awoken, and he wanted to just switch right back to his "I'm taking over the world" ways. And I'm going to seduce a woman along the way and then try to take over the ship. It was great adversary, but it was only as it played against Kirk. Without Kirk, Khan would have been boring.
So
as far as the original series goes,
I think it's official. Kirk, nothing dethrones Kirk, at least in the original series.
At least in the original series.
So maybe next time we'll start pitting characters from the original series to other Star Trek series. And that could be, I mean, obviously there's like the whole classic Kirk versus Picard thing, but we don't want to start a war, so let's not go there. But we can have
Kirk versus Pike would be really interesting, because the Strange New World series the second series is going to come on fairly soon. They've done a brilliant job of updating characters so that they're more realistic for a 21st century audience, but still maintaining some of the magic and some of the, just, I hate to say it because I don't like using the word, just some of the optimism of the original series. And they've done a very, very good job on that. And I will say that actually the Picard season 3, they've done a pretty good job. And I'm not, I watch the episodes once and I watch them over and over and over again. But I will say, check out YouTube, Star Trek Phase 2, or there's a couple of different series that are on. They're actually pretty good.
Cool. Well, I hope they do. And thanks for playing. I love a little Star Trek conversation. I don't consider myself a Trekkie, but I do like Star Trek. I've seen at least all the original stuff. I think I've seen most of the original TV shows. But I was a big Next Gen fan, big DS9 fan, loved Voyager, all of those. Liked Enterprise quite a bit. So seen most of those, pretty much all the movies, I think. But I don't collect Star Trek goodies or go to conventions. But
and honestly, I don't go to the conventions, and I've only got you've seen my inventory, so I just like.
You are very knowledgeable on the series though, which is pretty awesome.
Oh, when I was a kid, oh my god, yes, I was a Trekkie, Trekker, Trekette, whatever. I was all those things and more.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for playing along and sharing that with us. And I'm sure we'll have more good Trek conversation in the future. So Rich, I think that's going to wrap up this special edition episode of this one, sponsored by our friends at Sophos. Big thanks to them for doing that. What should people do? People should subscribe to the ChannelPro Weekly Podcast everywhere podcasts are found. Doesn't matter which one it is, we're probably in it. Make sure you subscribe there. Leave a rating, leave a comment if you can. If you like to watch, we're on YouTube. You can subscribe there, hit the bell, hit the like, hit the button, leave comments there. We like those. If you want to just send us an email, you can send it to podcast@channelpronetwork.com. And of course, that URL, channelpronetwork.com that I just mentioned, that is the place to go each and every week for the latest news, articles, resources, white papers, downloads, all kinds of stuff to help keep you up to date on what's going on in this crazy industry, but also a lot of really, really good thought leadership pieces to kind of help you make your business better in all sorts of different ways. And I'm sure Bob would attest that a lot of the content that we have there is just must read stuff for anybody in this business.
Yep.
So yeah, make sure you do that. And I think that's all we got, Rich. So what am I missing?
I don't think you've missed anything except telling people how to get in touch with us.
That's I said an email, but I also I almost missed it, but I didn't. It was tricking you. It was tricking you.
It was a test.
It was a test you have failed. No, I want to also give a big thanks to Bob Coppedge. He is the CEO and owner of Simplex-IT. Bob, thank you so much for coming on and joining us for this special edition episode. Really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun. I hope you had fun.
I did, except for the Back to the Future stuff.
It's okay to like more than one sci-fi property.
Oh, yes. It's good stuff. It was good stuff.
So Bob, if anybody wants to network with you, connect with you, get in touch with you, talk Star Trek with you, where can they go? How can they find you?
Absolutely. Simplex-IT.com is the website. I'm also very active over on LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever.
Awesome. Hopefully folks do that. So again, big thanks to Bob Coppedge. Big thanks to Eric Kokonas of Sophos for joining us. Big thanks to Sophos for sponsoring the special edition episode. And we will be back next week rolling with our regular episodes. So we will see everybody then. Take care.